Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the Week 3 Saturday main slate of college football DFS. I know this is coming out a little later in the week than usual. It's because I've been battling an illness. Don't quite know what it is. Tested negative for everything they can test you for, but still kind of feel like crap. Voice still isn't going all that great. But here to get this episode out to you guys because, it is the Week 3 Saturday main slate. And so here on this episode, we're going to break down all 12 games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups for each game. I do still hope to do the live show at some point this week, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you can join us when me and Zach go live and discuss the slate and kind of break it down in further detail. Whereas this is kind of a bird's eye overview of the entire slate. That one we're going to really dive deep into some strategy questions, some ownership questions, stuff like that. Just kind of a 201 level analysis of this DFS slate. And like I said, I hope to have that sometime this week, maybe Thursday night. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that we can be with us for that. And I do apologize for my voice. I know it's not going to sound the best. If you don't want to listen to it, I get it. Like, I understand where you're coming from. This is not going to be the best sounding episode. Very much consider this my Jordan flu game episode. All right, let's go ahead now and dive into the 12 games. So here in week 3, we are nearing the end of non-conference season, which can be a good thing and a bad thing in DFS. So once we get into conference play, we're going to see games with a lot closer spreads, maybe some with lower totals. It'll generally be a little bit more predictable, but there's generally less angles to take once conference play starts because everything's out there in front of you. So here on this slate, I would say it's somewhere in between week 1 and week 2. Week 2, we had a ton of blowout games on the slate, just not really a whole lot of like classic matchups. Here on this slate, we've got some close games. We've got some good matchups, and we definitely have some angles that we can take to get ahead from the field in DFS contests. First game on the slate is going to be Oklahoma heading to Philly to take on Temple. Oklahoma's AD, what are you doing? Why are you scheduling this game? Oklahoma is 23.5-point favorites with a game total of 51.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 38-14 in favor of the Sooners. Remember, we don't do decimal points on implied totals because you can't go out and score 0.5 points in a football game. So for the Oklahoma side, that 38-point team total is one of the highest on the slate, and it stands to reason that if they're going to put up a high point total, John Mateer is going to put up a high fantasy points total. He has been the absolute carrier of this offense. This offense, I've watched them play twice. Well, I didn't watch the whole Illinois State game, but I watched the highlights. I'm still not impressed with their offensive line, their running backs, or their wide receivers, but all they do is just keep scoring points because John Mateer is that dude. And he's been over 33 DraftKings points in both games so far. It stands to reason he is going to do so again. At that salary, $9,400, you really want 28, 29 DraftKings points to feel good, and there's no reason to expect that he won't be able to do it, considering he's done it in both games. This Temple defense is not too hot. Oklahoma scored 8 total touchdowns so far this season. Mateer has accounted for 7 of them total. So basically, if Oklahoma scores 5 touchdowns, you can pretty much expect 4 of them to be Mateer, and that is enough to pay off his salary. Great play this week. At the running back position, this is just a total and complete mess right now. They get Jaden Ott in the portal, and they don't really use him. He's still priced at 7,100 on DraftKings. To me, he's totally unplayable. Torrey Blaylock has been the guy who has led them in yards so far this season. 17 carries, 68 yards, and 1 touchdown. It's not great, bub. There's a lot of projection sites, and there's some people who are touting him up this week. I'm just not here for it. Like, yeah, this game's going to be a blowout, but I think it's much more likely that the touchdowns are going to come from Mateer than for me trying to guess who ends up hitting it here in this committee. Like I said, Blaylock's the most likely one, but you're still going to see carries for Ott, Barnes, and Robinson, and I would rather just play Mateer. At the wide receiver position, I do think there are some guys you can stack Mateer with. Really, 2 guys that stand out. Deion Burks is the wide receiver 1. He leads the team in targets through 2 games with 20 total. He's caught 7 passes in both those games, been over 23 DraftKings points in both those games. I think he's a great play. I think he's one of the top receiver options on the slate. Keontez Lewis, ranked 2nd on the team with 14 total targets, was much more effective against Illinois State than he was against Michigan, and now his price is up. I think the Temple defense is a little closer to Illinois State than it was to Michigan's, so maybe this could be another good game for him. And then the tight end, Jaron Kanak, is the 3rd leading target getter on the team. Isaac Satania is 4th. Neither of the 2 of them has scored a touchdown so far this season, but both of them are involved regularly in the offense. I think that if you're playing this Oklahoma offense, you want to play Burks, and if you're looking to get different, you can consider Lewis, Satania, or Kanak, but I'm really going to focus my attention on Burks. Now for the Temple side, and we're going to go pretty quick for this one. So this is a direct departure from what Temple's first 2 games have looked like. They have won their first 2 games in blowout fashion, both by at least 32 points. They scored 42 points or more in both those games. Evan Simon is the starting quarterback, and his numbers look great so far, but it's because of the poor competition he's been playing. Now, he's accounted for 9 of Temple's 13 total touchdowns. So if Temple scores 2 touchdowns in this game, you're going to need him to account for both to be a valid DraftKings play, but he's only $4,700. So if he sees an increase in passing volume and he has a little bit of success, I mean, I could see him getting home at that salary, but I do not see him being a guy that's going to break the slate at that salary. Now, at the running back position, Temple under Casey Keeler, I do expect to be a run-heavy team and want to run the football when they can, and they're going to do that with Jay Ducker. He is the RB1 by a significant margin, especially while the games have been close. He's been like the only guy in the game. If you think that you can run on Oklahoma, which I kind of do, considering Justin Saints had a lot of success against him last week, Jay Ducker might be a guy who could make your player pool. Just in college football DFS, there's so few workhorse running backs that when you can find one, you really want to play him, and Ducker is one of those guys. At the receiver position, the only guy I am considering is JoJo Bermudez. He's seen 10 targets so far this year. He's the only one above 8. It's really hard to feel confident about any of the other guys. I think you can pretty much cross off that position aside from him. Next up, we've got Wisconsin taking on Alabama. The spread is currently Alabama minus 21.5, game total 46.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 34-12 in favor of the Crimson Tide. Now, I think when it comes to Alabama, I think the pendulum swung too far on them. The FSU loss was obviously disappointing, but I think they're a much better team than they showed in that game. And I really think they cover this spread just from a personal perspective. I have big concerns about Wisconsin, and it starts at the quarterback position. Billy Edwards Jr. is doubtful for this game. Danny O'Neal would be the starter. He's not a runner. He's not really big time upside guy in fantasy. This team's going to look to run the football, and if they're not going to be running it with you, then you don't really have a whole lot of fantasy points you can score. So he's a pass for me. At the running back position, I do like Dylan Jones. Like we said about workhorse backs, he is one of them. 24 carries so far this season. No other running back has more than 9. And we did see FSU have success just running it right at Alabama. So I do think that Dylan Jones is worth a look. At the wide receiver position, Wisconsin does have 2 big play wide receivers, 2 guys that could really just pay off their salary on one play, and that's Trek Kekahuna and Vinny Anthony. It wouldn't shock me to see one of them put up a DFS viable score. Lance Mason, the tight end, was actually the leading target getter last week in the game that Danny O'Neal played, so he could be worth a look as well. But it's really hard to feel good about these Wisconsin guys in this game against Alabama. Team number 4, team number 2 for this game is Alabama. So Ty Simpson is the starting quarterback, and it has just been a tale of 2 games for him. He was dreadful against FSU, was a perfect 17 for 17 against UL Monroe. So if Wisconsin's able to keep this game close, I think you're going to see a pretty good game out of Ty Simpson. This team's really struggled to run the football, so a lot of their upside, a lot of their scoring is going to come through the air. And so I really think that gives Simpson a decent case for upside here in this slate. At the running back position, like I said, the running game's been struggling. A big reason why has been because Jam Miller has been hurt. He hasn't played yet so far this season. Is considered questionable for this game. If he plays, I'm not interested at that high of a salary. If he doesn't play, Richard Young has been operating as the RB1, but hasn't been very effective. Kevin Riley has been operating as the RB2. He has been significantly more effective. And to me, at a minimum price of $3,000, if you're looking to punt the running back position, he would be one of them that you could consider as long as Jam Miller is out. At the wide receiver spot for Bama, Ryan Williams is expected to be back for this game. He is the perceived wide receiver 1 coming into the season. Had a huge freshman year last year with a few breakout games. He didn't really finish the season strong last year. Didn't really do a lot against FSU. I think he's overpriced. I'm probably going to pass on him. If I'm playing a Bama receiver, it's going to be Jeremy Bernard, who has operated as the wide receiver 1. He has been the target leader in both games so far this season for Alabama. Put up at least 20 DraftKings points in both games so far this season. I think he's the guy you want. I think $7,000 is a reasonable price tag. Apples to apples, I would rather pay some other high dollar receivers than Bernard, but I do think if you're playing Simpson, you got to play him stacked, and that's a guy you could do it with. Isaiah Horton is the wide receiver 3, hasn't really taken off yet this season. Game number 3. This is an interesting one to me. Clemson at Georgia Tech. So, y'all know, if you've been listening to the podcast since the summer where we talked about best ball, we talked about, the season preview and all that, I'm high on this Georgia Tech team. I like them a lot. And I have been kind of hinting at this upset pick for months now. And the funny part is that now everybody else is hopping on the bandwagon because Clemson's only 3.5 point favorites. The game total is 53.5 points. This is the highest point total in a close game here on this slate. So this is going to be a really good game if you're interested in stacking it. I really think the Yellow Jackets have a good chance in this one. So if I could go on like a little Colin Cowherd-esque rant here, right? So juxtapose college football against NFL for a second. When you watch the NFL on Sunday, especially this past Sunday, what wins in the NFL is transcendent quarterbacks. I'm talking Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. And if you don't have one of those guys, you're just not like, you can't really feel like you have a great chance at winning unless your roster is just significantly better than the rest of the competition, like a San Francisco 49ers or Philadelphia Eagles, right? So in the NFL, the transcendent quarterback wins. In college football, what wins more often than not is just having more NFL bodies at all positions than your opponent. As a Texas fan, I've seen this in the Steve Sarkisian era. In the Tom Herman era, we looked at the line of scrimmage and otherwise like any of the other teams we were going up against. In the Steve Sarkisian era, now that we are recruiting NFL talented players, they just look different. Like when they line up, they look bigger, faster, stronger than their opponent. And that is what wins in college football. You look at every college football national champion for the last 15 years, that's what it's been, is the team with the most NFL bodies generally wins or is, competing at the top of the sport. The one exception will be Cam Newton's Auburn team, which was the transcendent quarterback. But NFL bodies are what wins in college football. Clemson, I don't think, has the same NFL bodies that they used to. And I think that has kind of brought them back to the pack in college football. I think that they still have the perception as being this like national title contender, and I don't think that they're that. They returned a lot from last year, but I think last year they were kind of overrated. Like, they won the ACC, they represented well against Texas, but Texas still just looked different than Clemson did. And Texas could run all over Clemson as much as they wanted to. And to me, that spells not good signs for this Clemson team going forward. And that's why I think Georgia Tech has a really good chance at winning this game. All right, rant over. Let's talk about it from a DFS perspective. Cade Klubnik has really struggled to start this season. He's yet to eclipse 15 DraftKings points in a game. However, when you look at what he did last year, $8,700 is a very reasonable price tag for the production that he had last year. And so if this game is back and forth, if it's a shootout, you got to feel like Cade Klubnik is going to hit value, especially considering he hasn't really shown his mobility or his rushing upside just yet. I think there's a ton of upside in playing Cade Klubnik. At the running back position, it's kind of a mess for Clemson right now. Adam Randall has really turned into their workhorse running back. He had 21 attempts in that Troy game. Not super effective in that Troy game. Really not effective in the LSU game. Basically, he's a converted wide receiver. So he's going to be able to catch passes out of the backfield, but he's not like this polished between the tackles downhill runner just yet. And I feel like they're kind of, what's the right word here? Reluctant to make him a workhorse. They really want it to be Davidson or Azumame, but neither of those guys have been good so far this season. And so it's kind of Randall by default. I'm not interested in Randall in DFS, even though I do think that the workhorse running back role for Clemson has been one that's been very lucrative. I'm not sure that they're all in on making him that workhorse. At the wide receiver position with Clemson, it starts with Antonio Williams. He's their starting slot. He's their best receiver. He's been out since the first quarter of the LSU game. And if he's back this week, that would change everything. But we're going to assume he's out. If he's out, Bryant Wesco Jr. has operated as the wide receiver one, has been the leading target earner through the season. 11 total catches, had a 34-point DraftKings points outing against Troy. He's a great play if Williams continues to be out. TJ Moore is also a super talented sophomore that has been fairly productive in the absence of Williams, but not to the level that Wesco is. Apples to apples, you got to play Wesco between the two of them. And then if Williams continues to be out, I'm going to be here for Tyler Brown. He's kind of taken the Antonio Williams role. 8 total catches so far, has not scored a touchdown this season at $3,800. I think he's a steal with that role if Antonio Williams continues to be out. Now, Georgia Tech is a very interesting team. So Georgia Tech, I think, is a nightmare matchup for Clemson. You think about what has given Clemson trouble the last 2 years with this kind of same group of players. It's been teams that just run downhill right at you, right? You think about Clemson, or you think about Texas, Georgia, South Carolina. Like, the teams that beat Clemson tend to be teams that have a strong run game. And Georgia Tech has an elite level run game. And the big reason why is because quarterback Haynes King, he is one of the best runners from the quarterback position that I've seen in recent college football. If you haven't watched Georgia Tech, they basically run their whole gamut of run plays as just direct snaps to Haynes King. Like, I'm being dead serious here. They will literally direct snap at Haynes King. The offensive line will block inside zone, and Haynes King will run inside zone like he's a running back. And he is good. Like, he's a really talented runner of the football. Ran for 156 yards against Colorado, capped off with a game-winning touchdown, which was his third of the night. 40 DraftKings points in that game. Ton of upside for Haynes King. I think it's a great matchup. He did not play the game against Gardner Webb because he was a little banged up. I am not concerned about that. This is a guy who's battled a ton of injuries the last few seasons because of how physical he plays and how physical he runs. And they were just looking to keep him healthy and load manage him for this game. So I think that he's going to be all systems go. I think he's a great play at $7,800 on DraftKings. Now, if you're looking to get a little contrarian, I think that playing Jamal Haynes at running back would be a little contrarian. He is pretty much a workhorse back for Georgia Tech. He's got about a 65-35 split with the RB2, which is pretty significant. He is a home run hitter at the running back position, so he's like 1 or 2 long breakaway runs away from breaking a slate, and I don't think people are going to play him. I think people are going to opt to play Haynes King. I think he's in a great spot. The RB2 is Malachi Hosley, who was great against Gardner Webb, was solid against Colorado in that game as well. He's only $3,100. If you're looking to get really frisky at the running back position, I think he's a guy you could throw in your player pool because of his cheap price tag and because you know that Georgia Tech is going to try and hopefully have success with running the football. The wide receiver position is interesting for Georgia Tech. I think you can play Haynes King unstacked, but the problem is that they've been fairly evenly distributed among 3 receivers so far this season: Rutherford, Rivers, and Stockton. They've been really rotating the tight end position. I'm not super interested in those guys. Dean Patterson had a big game in the second half with the backups against Gardner Webb. I'm not interested in him. But Rutherford, Rivers, and Stockton, they're just all evenly matched right now, and I don't really know how to break it down between the 3 of them. And so that might be a situation that I might pass on this week, but definitely look for trends going forward to see who we can be stacking with Haynes King, because Haynes King is going to be a guy that I'm going to be playing in a ton of my lineups. All right, let's take a quick breather. I need a coughing break, and then we'll break it down with the rest. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. It's where I tweet out all updates for the show, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on there. I am also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Fantasy Corner Discord is just a blast of a place to be. You got a whole lot of really smart, really good people in there talking strategy, talking plays, bouncing ideas off each other. And then once the game starts, it's sweating it out together. You got people tilting, you got memes being posted, you got jokes being made. It's just an absolute blast to be a part of. If you're looking for a community to talk about DFS with for not just college football, but all sports, I cannot recommend it enough. And then if you do want to know who actually makes my college football lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. It's where I post my core plays for every single college football DFS slate, and as well as a full written article as to why they are my core plays. So if you're looking to get better at college football DFS, you want to kind of get some advice and some, kind of a head start on your lineups, that would be a place you could go for that. All right, so we go from talking about one of the best games of the slate to one of the bleh games of the slate, which is Central Michigan taking on Michigan. Michigan, the Wolverines, that is, 27.5-point favorites with a game total of 41.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 35-7 in favor of the Wolverines. For Central Michigan, this team could just be a total cross-off. Joe Labus, the starting quarterback, has not topped 10 DraftKings points so far this season. The running back room is a full-on 50-50 split between Cornist and Biggins. And then in the wide receiver room, no wide receiver has caught more than 5 passes all season long, and no wide receiver has scored more than 11 DraftKings points in a game all season long. So just a total cross-off for me. Maybe if you want to get cute and try the running backs, you can, but I think there are better options for lesser cost. We've already mentioned a few of them. Let's talk about Michigan now. So Bryce Underwood is the starting quarterback. He is a super prized, highly sought after recruit. And they really are kind of yet to let him open it up and see what he's got. He has 13 and 5 DraftKings points in 2 games. This is a game where Michigan's expected to score 4 or 5 touchdowns. And he hasn't had multiple passing touchdowns in game yet this season. He's only $5,700 for that reason. If Michigan finally opens up the playbook and really sees what they have in Bryce Underwood, he could have a huge game in this one. And he could really break a slate at the price tag of $5,700. I think he's a GPP only play. I think there's better plays out there than him, but I could certainly make the upside case for him with that 35-point implied total and the fact that he is one of the biggest quarterback recruits in recent memory. At the running back position, Justice Haynes is the workhorse running back. He's nearly doubling up all the other running backs in terms of volume. He's been great so far this season. 24 and 39 DraftKings points in 2 games. Arguably the top running back play on the slate. You got no complaints from me from playing Justice Haynes. At the wide receiver position, look, this is where Michigan really has let Bryce Underwood down. Like, you got one of the biggest quarterback recruits of all time, and he's throwing to just a bunch of FCS level receivers. These guys are not very good objectively. Donovan McCulley, Indiana transfer, is the best one of them. He was the best against Oklahoma. He would be the guy I would stack with Underwood, but this is just not a great room. Marlon Klein. Why did I want to call him Mitchell Klein? Marlon Klein is the tight end who was really good in week 1 against New Mexico, did not play against Oklahoma. If he's back, I would consider him as well, but I'm not here for any of the other Michigan wideouts. Time for another bleh game. We got Oregon taking on Northwestern in the temporary stadium, I believe. I think. So Northwestern, they're playing some games at like Wrigley Field this season. They're also playing some games in their temporary stadium. I love the temporary stadium. I think it's beautiful. I'll have to look up and see where this one is. But Oregon is 27.5-point favorites. Game total of 49.5 points. Implied score is Oregon 38-11 here in this one. So in both of Oregon's wins, they have played just superiorly. I'm not superiorly. Well, yeah, they are superior talent-wise by a significant margin to both the teams that they've played, and that's going to be the case here in this one. Dante Moore has been efficient, but largely unneeded to really do a whole lot, and he's put up 22 and 23 DraftKings points in both those two games. I think he's a hard sell for like a GPP play because they're just not going to have him throw the ball a whole lot, right? Just like all these running backs to me are a super hard sell because they have been a massive committee in these blowout wins. Noah Whittington is the running back one, but he's not seeing a whole lot of carries, which is limiting his upside. Against Oklahoma State, he only needed 4 carries to put up 15 DraftKings points. If he ever saw 20, he'd be an incredible play. But this team is continually rotating running backs. And if you look at the fact that Dante Moore only played about 3/4 of the last game. When you look at the carries when Dante Moore was in this game, I actually got this stat from somebody in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Lamar, excuse me. Why did I think that was a C? Lamar and Harris have been the 2 leaders in carries while Moore has been in the game. And so Lamar, with being the most effective one of all of them, to me, makes for a really intriguing play at $3,000 minimum there on DraftKings. Mekhi Hughes was supposed to be the starter coming over for Tulane, really hasn't been used as such so far this season. Now, for the wide receiver position for Oregon, they've got Gary Bryant and DeCorian Moore, who are great. Like, they're really talented, really good, but they're just not getting a whole lot of PPR passing volume because of the way that Oregon's winning games. It makes them tough sells. You would really be reliant on a touchdown for the two of them. Same deal with Malik Benson, who's their third option as well, and Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end as well. They're hard sells. I'm going to wait till Oregon actually has to play like a full game. Next up, let's talk about Northwestern. This team could be considered a total cross-off. So they've got SMU transfer Preston Stone at quarterback. Holy crap, making a lot of errors today, y'all. Blame it on the sickness. So they've got Preston Stone at quarterback. He's a transfer from SMU. He was not bad at SMU. Like, he was the quarterback that led them to an AAC championship 2 years ago. He's been real bad this year. Against Western Illinois, he looked great because it was Western Illinois. Against Tulane, he had negative 2.7 DraftKings points. It's bad. It's real bad. Oregon defense is better than Tulane. Hard to have any faith in them at all. At the running back position, their best offensive weapon was Cam Porter. He's out for the season now. So what you're going to see is a boost for Hyman and Komolafe at the running back position. I don't really have any interest in playing them against Oregon. Maybe when they're playing some other crappy Big Ten teams, I might play them, but not this week. And then the wide receiver position, Griffin Wild. He's a transfer from an FCS school, I believe, South Dakota State. He's seen 15 targets so far this season, which is by far the top of this on the team. He's yet to score a touchdown, but he's been double-digit DraftKings points in both games. He might be the guy that you could look for DFS on this Northwestern team, but you don't have to. There's better plays elsewhere. Next up, let's talk about one of the games of the day. Georgia heading to Knoxville to take on Tennessee. The spread in this one is Georgia -3.5 with a game total of 49.5 points. I am very interested in betting the dogs in this one. I got to be honest. I just think that Kirby Smart has kind of owned Josh Heupel in the time that they've both been head coaches. The Georgia defense has very much been the kryptonite to what has stopped the Tennessee offense. And in general, if I go on another rant here, you're seeing more and more offenses use the Josh Heupel wide splits, veer and shoot type of offense, right? And you're seeing more and more defenses combat that by doing what the NFL has done, where we're going to go 2 high safeties. We're going to make sure we cover everybody in the receiving game, limit big plays, and we're going to dare you to run the ball. It's basically kind of been a punch and counter punch for offenses and defenses, which what I think has been a big reason why overall scoring is down is because of the proliferation of 2 high safeties. You have seen less and less explosive plays in the pass game, which means less and less scoring. I think this game is like the perfect example of that. I have failed to see Tennessee producing a whole lot of explosive plays in the pass game because Georgia is going to play with them the way they always do with the Kirby Smart, Nick Saban match quarters defense. You can look that up. There's a ton of content on YouTube available that explains it. And it's been really good at limiting the Josh Heupel offense, at least with Kirby Smart's teams at Georgia, largely because of the talent that Georgia has in the front 7 and their ability to fill and fit the run. All right, ran over. So Georgia implied to score 26.5 points in this game. You'd call it 27. I think if they do, Gunnar Stockton's going to be one of the best DFS plays this slate. He's a mobile quarterback, has been mobile in both games, looked great against Marshall, not great against Austin Peay. Georgia is known for kind of sleepwalking through those games against FCS competition. $6,000 is a straight up misprice. He's one of my favorite quarterback plays on the slate. He's going to be very popular, but it's for good reason. If Georgia scores 4 touchdowns in this one, there's a good chance that Stockton is going to account for 3 or 4 of them just with how their offense operates, because at the running back position, Georgia employs a committee. Shocker. It's what they've done for the last 5 years. It's Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens with a little bit of pass game work from Cash Jones. Frazier's the most talented. He's the best one, but he loves to fumble the football, which is a good way to very quickly get yourself in Kirby Smart's doghouse. If he does not fumble, then he's going to be the carry leader. Currently, he has 25 to Bowens is 17, but Frazier's got to secure the football. And to me, that makes him a solid play, but also a risky play because there is definitely committee risk. There's touchdown vulturing risk. There's also benching risk, but I think he's a solid play at $6,300, but not without risk. At the wide receiver position, the only real 2 productive receivers so far for Georgia have been Branch and Young, but they're 2 totally different archetypes of wideout. Branch is the speedy, big play guy that would only need 1 play to hit value on DraftKings. Young is the stable, big body, possession type of receiver that's going to get PPR volume. I wouldn't have a problem stacking either of them with Gunnar Stockton, but with Gunnar Stockton's mobility, I also would not have a problem playing Stockton unstacked here in this one. Also, let's talk about Tennessee real quick. They actually play at one of the fastest tempos in the nation, which is leading to more overall plays in the game than what you're seeing out of most teams, which is quite helpful from a DraftKings perspective because more plays means more opportunities to score fantasy points, which is really good for both them and their opponents. Joey Aguilar is the new quarterback. He has been pretty impressive so far, but he hasn't played a defense nearly the level of Georgia. He's only $5,300 on DraftKings. That's a cheap price tag for Aguilar, especially considering he's in the Josh Heupel offense. But like I said, Kirby Smart has been the kryptonite for this offense. I don't think he's a bad play, but I think there's better plays out there. At the running back position, look, it's a full-blown committee right now. You've got Star Thomas with 24 carries, Peyton Lewis with 16, Deshaun Bishop for 14. I don't know which one of them it's going to be any given week. I'm going to kind of wait and see, especially considering that this is a tough matchup for them against Georgia, and see if one separates themselves before I start playing them in DraftKings. At the wide receiver position, this is good news. It's a very condensed passing offense. It's got 3 guys that are even remotely relevant. It's Brazzell, Staley, and Matthews in that order for targets this year. Brazzell has been great. Staley had the big play against Syracuse in week 1. Matthews has the best recruiting pedigree out of all of them. I could see an argument being made that if you're looking to game stack this game, you could play any of the 3 of them. My favorite will be Brazzell at that price tag. All right, next up, getting into the afternoon games now. Or I'm sorry, that was an afternoon game. Yeah, but side note, y'all, it's also going to feel weird there being a big SEC game on Saturday at 3:30 and it not being on CBS. Just for a chunk of my childhood, you just relied on the CBS 3:30 game with Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson. In the last few years, it hasn't even been Vern Lundquist. But anyway, moving on, we got Oregon State taking on Texas Tech in the next one. The spread in that one is Texas Tech minus 22.5 points with a game total of 60.5, meaning the implied total is about, hold on, I did the math here wrong on my total here, y'all. 36 to 24 in favor of the Red Raiders. Yeah, when I made my notes, I did the math completely wrong. Imagine that, a high school math teacher doing the math wrong. So I had to redo it correctly in my head to get that right. 36 to 24 in favor of Texas Tech. So for Oregon State, Malik Murphy, transfer from Duke, which is a good get for them if we're being honest. He's been solid so far this season, 16 and 30 DraftKings points so far. And we'll take that at a salary of $5,000. Here's the issue. If you're looking to stack up Oregon State, this is a perfect example of the quarterback being the least important part of the stack. Here's why. Murphy has no rushing upside. So all of his passing is going to be shared with a wide receiver. And the rest of their offense is so condensed that you know what skill position players it's going to go to, that you don't really need to play the quarterback when you know you're capturing all the points from the wide receiver, and receiving yards are worth more than passing yards. Receiving touchdowns are worth more than passing touchdowns. So if you're looking to stack this team or stack this game, I can make an argument for doing it without Murphy, but I also can make the argument that $5,000 is a super reasonable price tag, and it's very easy for him to get home in this type of game environment. But about this offense being very condensed, they do have a true workhorse running back in Anthony Hankerson. He hasn't been super great from a fantasy perspective so far this season, but he's seeing a ton of carries. He's a true workhorse. This team's going to run the football. We know that for a fact. I think he's a very solid play at $7,200. Remember, in college football DFS, you pay for workhorse running backs, and he's one that I'm willing to pay for, especially considering we don't know how good this Texas Tech defense is just yet, because Texas Tech is yet to play a serious opponent. At the wide receiver position, more about this offense being super condensed. Trent Walker and Taz Reddick have both seen 19 targets so far this season, neither of whom have scored a touchdown, but both of whom are averaging over 16 DraftKings points a game. They are both in play on this slate here, in my opinion. Now, onto the Texas Tech side. So, like I said, they have not played a serious opponent yet, which makes them really hard to evaluate and really hard to kind of figure out where they're going to be going, right? So, for Texas Tech, their quarterback is Baron Morton. He scored between 22 and 24 DraftKings points in both games. And what that has caused is, that is a result of, I had the wrong cause and effect. That is a result of both the games that they played being massive blowouts. He just hasn't really been needed to do a whole lot. So if Oregon State is going to keep this game close and this game is going to get pushed, it would stand to reason that Baron Morton would have a very solid output. At the running back position, we know about the preseason injury to Quentin Joyner. It's been a 50-50 committee since then between Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. Williams is much more the big play guy. Dickey is much more the red zone, end zone guy, which is really annoying because both of them have paths to upside on 50-50 volume. In last week, Dickey was really unaffected, but he fell into the end zone twice and had a solid performance. Williams did not. So, it's just a really give and take with who's going to be who on the given week. I would rather, with their expensive price tags, I would rather pay for other guys whose roles I know are more defined. At the wide receiver position, it's very obvious who the top three are. It's Douglas, Eakin, and Virgil. I think they're all three a little overpriced, except for Virgil. I think Virgil's very affordable. Virgil has seen the most targets so far and the most production, but it's really hard to project this group going forward because of the unseriousness of the competition that they have played. All right, we got 5 games left. I'm going to take a little bit of breather so I can get myself right, get some coffee in, get some drink in me, and then we'll move on. All right, so before we talk about the backyard brawl, I do want to mention if this video is helping you out in any way, please hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Please rate and review if you are listening on audio. The start of college football season, along with the first week of the NCAA tournament and major season in golf, is the time when my channel gets the most views, most traction, and really want to grow the community, spread the kind of the joy of playing college football DFS, and player props and betting on college football as well. So if you know someone who's interested, spread the word, tell a friend, and help me out by hitting that like button because it really does help the video show up on the algorithm. I really did not know how much it helped until I started actually creating content, but it does so much. All right. Now let's go ahead and continue on. Next game, like I said, the backyard brawl. Pitt is 7.5-point favorites against West Virginia. I think that spread's a little low. I think this game turns into a blowout. Game total of 57.5 points, with the implied score being 33-25 in favor of the Pitt Panthers. Pitt is another team like Texas Tech that has not played a serious opponent all season long. But Eli Holstein has been great in these type of games, and he's had 33 and 27 DraftKings points in 2 games. He does have rushing upside. He's great for a price tag of $7,400. To me, he's one of the top points per dollar quarterback plays on the slate. He's a little bit difficult to stack, but I don't think you have to stack him because of his ability to run and the fact that his point totals in his 2 seasons as the Pitt starter have been very, very correlated to Pitt's total points scored. At the running back position, this is a guy that I think is a great buy low candidate, which is ironic because he's still in the $8,000 range on DraftKings. It's Desmond Reed. So we saw him last year at Pitt. Desmond Reed is a big play waiting to happen. He's a huge part of the passing game, and he's a workhorse back as long as the game stays close. Hasn't seen a huge workload so far this year because the games haven't stayed close. So if West Virginia keeps this game remotely competitive, you're going to see a few big plays, a few touchdowns, and a lot of receptions out of Desmond Reed. Top overall running back play on the slate, in my opinion. And there are plenty of value plays out there that will allow you to get to his $8,500 salary. At the wide receiver position, this is where it gets a little bit murky for Pitt. They do have 2 guys who stand above the rest. Raphael Williams is the target leader on the season with 10. Kenny Johnson is second with 8. I'm kind of mainly interested in those 2. Katoris Hicks, who is a transfer from Louisville, one of the Kentucky schools. He's also had 2 pretty big games so far, but a lot of that's due to the fact that Pitt's been up in blowouts, and I really think my interest is in Johnson and Williams. I would probably just pick one of them to pair with Holstein if you even feel the need to stack Holstein. Now, on the West Virginia side, there is exactly one player I'm considering on this side. and it ain't at the quarterback position. So basically, Nico Marchial is the listed starter, but he got pulled for a series last game just randomly out of the blue. It was like a temporary benching, and they gave a series to Jalen Henderson. He did not look good in that series. So I think it's very likely that both quarterbacks are going to play snaps in this game. And I'm not really here for that in DFS. That's a losing formula. At the running back position, here's where I'm interested. Jaheim White is out for the season. He was really good last year for them. I've always been on the Jaheim White train because he's just such an explosive player when the ball's in his hands. Really hate that he's out for the season. Clay Ash, who's Chris Ash is the Notre Dame defensive coordinator. So sorry for that. Clay Ash is the new RB1. I think he's going to be pretty good. The only problem is that historically, Rich Rod coach teams have played committee running backs, and the only other running back who has seen a carry so far this season is Sincere Bowers. Ty Edwards also got eligible very late in the process with the whole waiver situation with the NCAA, so he could end up becoming a factor. But we know Rich Rod teams are going to run the football, and right now it looks like Clay Ash is in line to see a bulk of those carries. I think he is certainly worth a look at $3,400. At the wide receiver position, only one guy I'm remotely considering, and he probably might not even make my player pool, and that's Cam Vaughn. Transfer from Jacksonville State with Rich Rod. He's been the wide receiver one so far this season. 13 total targets on the season. There's worse plays on the slate. I think there's better plays on the slate also, though. And a lot of them are in this next game. USC taking on Purdue. In this one, USC is 21.5-point favorites, game total of 58.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 40-18 in favor of the Trojans. USC is another team that has just not played a serious opponent so far this season, and for their credit, they've looked really good in those two games. The offense, especially, Jade Mayava has looked like a machine out there in the Lincoln Riley offense, which we know is so productive for quarterbacks. He scored at least 26 DraftKings points in both games. He scored at least 3 touchdowns in both games. And we really haven't seen his rushing upside yet because he does have some mobility from his time at UNLV, which we saw. So I think there's a ton of upside with Mayava. I think in terms of pay-ups at the quarterback position on this slate, he's right up there with John Mateer and another guy we're going to talk about later as far as the top overall options at the quarterback position. Great play for Mayava. At the running back position, Wayman Jordan has been the workhorse while games have been close. So if you think that Purdue keeps this game somewhat close, then Jordan's in a great spot. Eli Sanders has really been successful, but he's gotten a lot of run late in games. He's also relied on big plays to kind of pay off his price tag. So I would way rather play Jordan, especially if you could think that Purdue keeps this game somewhat close, which I tend to think they do. At the wide receiver position, great news. It's a super condensed passing offense. They're really only throwing to Lemon and Lane while the starters are in the game, and that is music to my ears. It makes them a very easy offense to stack. Lemon has seen 14 targets so far this season, and Lane has seen 8, but Lane is very much the red zone guy. We saw that in the Georgia Southern game. They're both great. They're both really solid plays. Lemon, I think, is one of the best wide receiver plays on the slate at salary of $6,700. Now, on the Purdue side, this is an interesting team because their offenses look really good through 2 games, but they have also not played a serious opponent. This is going to be a big test for this one is the USC defense actually improved? Because for the old Lincoln Riley teams, the defense would be a one that you could target no matter how bad the opponent was, right? So Ryan Brown is the quarterback. He's put up at least 18 DraftKings points in both games, thrown for 2 touchdowns in both games. He's solid. It's $5,100. That's a really, really gettable price tag for him, especially considering he's a dual threat. But the upside is kind of capped if you only think that Purdue is going to score 2 touchdowns. If you think they get to 3, maybe even 4, he's a great play at $5,100. I think a game stack of this game is certainly within the realm of possibility of playing because of how condensed the USC offense is and how condensed, for the most part, this Purdue offense is because they have a true workhorse running back in Devin Mockabee. Like I said, time and time again, you pay for workhorse running backs in college football. This guy carried the rock 32 times against Southern Illinois, and he's put up at least 18 DraftKings points in both games. Even if you think the USC defense is improved, which I do, this is a workhorse running back for a salary of only $5,400, and they're probably going to play him until the game is like over. So I think he's worth a look at $5,400. At the wide receiver position, this is tough to kind of manage because they didn't have a whole lot of passing success in week 2. In week 1, they did. And it was all Michael Jackson, who we talked about on the live show, had gained a lot of traction as a starter late in the week. paid off everybody as cheap chalk, 19 DraftKings points. Did not do a whole lot against Southern Illinois. And then you also had Ahmad Branch, who had a bomb in week 1 against Ball State. He's been pretty solid as well. Those would be the main 2 guys that I would consider. Nitro Tuggle does also start, but Jackson and Branch are the 2 that have seen the volume and the success so far this season. All right, 3 games to go. Next up. Okay, I got beef on this one, y'all. So if you guys do not know, the DraftKings Discord now is letting people vote on the last 2 games that go on the slate. They pick the first 10, and they're letting people vote for the last 2. For some reason, the people in that Discord voted this one as one of the last 2 games. What are y'all doing? This is not a game that needs to be on the slate. This is not 2 fun offenses to target. This is not a close game. There's so many better games that could have been selected. I voted for Auburn, South Alabama, because those to me are fun offenses with guys that we know who to target. This is not that. So for Iowa State, Rocco Becht. Oh, I guess I should go through the totals. Iowa State is 20.5-point favorites, game total of 55.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 38-17 in favor of the Cyclones. That bodes well for Rocco Becht if you think that they get to that total. You put up 22 DraftKings points against Kansas State, 10 against Iowa. In terms of defense, this is by far the worst one of those 3. I'm not even including the one against the FCS team because DraftKings apparently doesn't feel the need to include it either. So I think he's worth a look at $7,500 because he does have multiple touchdown upside, and this team, his run game has been really bad. Speaking of which, it's a full-blown 50-50 committee between Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. Pretty much exactly a 50-50 split in terms of total carries. If you're playing one, I would recommend Hansen because he is the red zone touchdown guy, but the problem is he's $6,800, and there are better running back plays on the slate for less cost than that. At the wide receiver position, this is a complete mess for Iowa State. So early in the season and in the best ball process, we were all in on Xavier Townsend is Jalen Noel and Chase Sowell is Jaden Higgins, and everything's going to be just like last year. No, it has not been just like last year. They played a lot of 12 personnel, and Burkle and Brahmer have been the 2 leading target getters. They're both tight ends. And then you've seen just this mess of a rotation between Sowell and Overby and Townsend and Eskildson at wide receiver. It's a mess. And I just have no idea. Maybe if you're playing Becht, you might want to pick one of them, but good luck figuring out which one it's going to be. Why did we put this game on the slate? On the Arkansas State side, their QB Jalen Raynor's the starter. I actually coached against that kid in high school. He's from a high school that's about 12 minutes from my front door. The high school that I coached football at, played him. He's an incredible athlete, just incredible athlete. He's a dual threat player, 30 DraftKings points against SEMO, much less effective against Arkansas, only put up 10. This game is likely to be somewhere in between those 2, but you got a true dual threat at $5,500. He's GPP viable in my opinion. It might be, you might want to say I'm getting too cute, getting too antsy to play this guy, but great athlete, great price tag. I don't think the Iowa State defense is all that good. I think he's an option. Sorry, y'all had to hit the cough button there. At running back, they do have a workhorse running back in Kenyon Clay, but it's hard to project him to have a whole lot of success against Iowa State. They do have a very clear wide receiver 1. It's Corey Rucker. He's been their wide receiver 1 the last 2 seasons. I think he's a solid option if you're going to be stacking Jalen Raynor. He's the guy I would want to stack with. The guy that's had the most success so far in the season has been Chauncey Cobb. So maybe you can make an argument for him, but I would just rather play the guy that's been there and done that, which is Corey Rucker. But Cobb, probably that wide receiver 2 for this offense. All right, now this was the second game the DraftKings community voted for, and I voted for this one because I'm a little biased. I'm a bit of a homer. We've got UTEP taking on Texas. Texas is 41.5-point favorites with a game total of 51.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 46-5 in favor of the Longhorns. Now, UTEP is going to have a lot of success in Conference USA on offense this season. This is a good Conference USA offense, in my opinion. But they're going up against Texas, and Texas only let up 14 points to Ohio State. They only let up 7 points to San Jose State. It's hard to anticipate UTEP scoring more than 14 points. It just is. The implied total is 5. Malachi Nelson, 4,900, former 5-star recruit, really talented. But if they're only going to score 1 touchdown, good luck. Neither quarterback has scored more than 15 DraftKings points against Texas so far this season, which he would need to be GPP viable. So pass. Running back position, this is also a pass. This is an interesting scenario, though. So I'll go through this. Cam Thomas was their wide receiver 2 last season. On the first game of the season, when UTEP was on the night slate, I was complaining like, hey, Cam Thomas isn't on there. What are they doing? Cam Thomas isn't on the slate. How did they mess this up? Little did I know he was listed at running back. And he's been the team's running back one to start the season. He was in week 1, but he did not play in week 2. And in week 2, you saw an even split between Hassan Wilson and Ashton Emery. If Thomas is back, he could be the guy again. We know he has pass catching upside. If he's not, it's probably full-blown committee time with Wilson and Emery. At the wide receiver position, I will target Kenny Odom here on this slate. Kenny Odom has more targets through 2 games than anybody else on this entire slate with 22. It's pretty impressive. He's very clearly the wide receiver 1. And last week, we saw 2 volume-based PPR machine targets in Scholes and Scudero of San Jose State put up between 13 and 15 DraftKings points against Texas without scoring a touchdown. Odom could very well do the same thing. And what if he does score a touchdown? So I think he's very much worth a look at $4,500. He will make my player pool. Now, on the Texas side, so, yeah, I'm going to be playing Arch Manning because I'm a Texas homer, and that's what I do. But let me make the argument for you. So Arch Manning put up 35 DraftKings points last week against San Jose State. And last season, when he played 2 G5 opponents, he put up 33 and 35 DraftKings points. That's really, really good. And even his salary, $9,500, that's really, really good. He has rushing upside. He's probably going to account for 4 or 5 touchdowns. I think he's very much worth a look here on this slate. I think Mayava and Mateer shape up as better plays than him, which should depress his ownership, which is what I want, and I think he's a great play. At the running back position, what you have seen is that Quintravion Wisner is not likely to play in this game. That will lead to a C.J. Baxter start. C.J. Baxter was good against San Jose State. Like, I thought he played well, but he didn't put up a whole lot of DraftKings points because he didn't find the end zone. He didn't break off any long runs. It's $7,500. You're going to need him to do that. I think that's a little bit expensive for my taste. I think there's better plays out there. But if this game stays close for a little bit, or if Baxter falls into the end zone 2 or 3 times, then he could very well pay off that price tag. When this game gets to be a blowout, Gibson and Clark are going to see the run. But I don't think it's really enough. You would be dependent on them getting a late touchdown to hit value. At the wide receiver position, this is what's interesting for Texas. Ryan Wingo is the wide receiver 1, leads this team in targets. Has not been good from a DFS perspective, is still $7,200. I think if you're playing Arch, it's very natural to not want to stack him with Wingo, especially considering the production, especially considering the price tag. But all the data is supporting a big Wingo bounce back. And I think that if he does bounce back, it's going to be in a big way. He's a big play guy. So I do think he's worth a look at $7,200. Injuries, the tight end is $6,000. He scored twice against San Jose State. He's been good so far this season. I think he's got an injury tag. I think he plays, though. He's a pretty solid red zone option. The 2 you got to look out for are Moore and Mosley. So basically, DeAndre Moore and Emmett Mosley, both unlikely to play in this game from everything I've read, which will lead to Parker Livingstone starting in the slot. And he's been great through 2 games. Scored in both games, was really good against San Jose State, caught a long touchdown. If he is the starting slot, if Moore and Mosley are out, he's only $3,500. He should be close to a lock button. Like, this is one of the easiest plays on the slate to me. If Moore and Mosley are out, you don't even have to play him stacked with Arch Manning. Just play him because somebody's got to be scoring those touchdowns, and it's likely to be him. Now, if he does not, or if the other 2 guys miss, Moore and Mosley, then what you'll probably see is freshman Khalid Lockett start in place of Moore. He caught 2 passes against San Jose State. He's really talented. They really like him at Texas. He might be worth a look at $3,000, but I would rather just pay $500 more to get Livingstone, who's the guy that we've seen do it already. Now, last game on the slate, which has got to be the last game start time for one that I've seen on a DraftKings slate, at least the main slate. It's South Florida taking on Miami, and I'm glad they included this. I think this is a really good, really intriguing game. Miami's 17.5-point favorites, game total of 56.5 points, meaning the implied score is about 37-19 in favor of the Hurricanes. So let's talk about the South Florida side. So South Florida's offense is really interesting because they're so dependent on big plays. And the question is, will they be able to generate those big plays against this Miami defense? Well, Miami's defense against Notre Dame looked really, really good, especially that front 4 and that pass rush. So I don't know if they're going to be able to generate big plays or not. But what we do know is this. Byron Brown, with or without big plays, is the quarterback. He's an elite runner of the football, true dual threat, seen at least 14 carries, at least 43 yards in both games, scored at least 20 DraftKings points in both games. If you can score 20 DraftKings points against Boise and Florida, I tend to think you can do it against Miami. And so I think he's a really solid points per dollar play there at $6,400, largely because of that dual threat upside. At the running back position, I could not be less interested. They get vultured by Byron Brown's running ability. Cartavius Norton is the leader in carries, but he has not been effective. None of the running backs for this team have been effective, so I'm out on that position entirely. At the wide receiver position, Singleton and Nimrod are the top two wide receivers. Singleton has been the big play guy. He's been the most productive guy so far. If you think that he gets another big play, another deep touchdown, go for it. Maybe stack him with Byron Brown, but I don't think you have to play Brown stacked, and I don't necessarily think he's as likely to break off a big play against this Miami defense than he was in the first two opponents. Now, on the Miami side, Carson Beck is their starting quarterback, and he really hasn't had a chance to have a quote unquote normal game. And what I mean by that is he played Notre Dame in week one of the best defenses in all of college football, and clearly one that's going to limit quarterback production. And then in week two, he played Bethune-Cookman, was just not really needed, right? 16 and 18 DraftKings points in those two games. It's really hard to imagine him not getting there here in this one. The Miami run game has been at best. So I really think that Carson Beck has a lot of upside here on this slate. He is a statue in the pocket, though, so you're going to want to play him stacked with at least one of his wide receivers. At the running back position, this is a committee, y'all. Jordan Lyle's been hurt, but he's expected to play in this game. It's been pretty much full-blown 50-50 between Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown. Now, if Lyle's in the mix, is it 40-40-20, 40-30-30? I don't know. I don't care. I'm not interested in paying salary to play any of those guys. At the wide receiver position, there's two guys that you want to target, which makes it super easy. You've got Malachi Toney, you got CJ Daniels. Both of them have seen double-digit targets this season. Toney is the leader with 17. He works out of the slot. He was great against Notre Dame, was great against Bethune-Cookman. $7,700 is a hefty price tag, but I think it's a price tag I'm willing to pay, especially in a stack if we think this Miami offense has a lot of success. CJ Daniels has also been good. He's kind of been more of the red zone guy, $5,400. Worth a look as well. Josiah Trader was supposed to be the wide receiver one at the start of the season. Got hurt in the Notre Dame game before recording a stat. Did not play in week two. Expected to play in this one. Could that throw a wrench in things? Maybe. But I really think that Malachi Toney's role is locked in and will not change. That will be the guy that if you're concerned about Trader, Malachi Toney I don't think is affected a whole lot by that at all. So there you have it, all 12 games. To kind of give a quick overview of everything we talked about. Lots of great pay-up options at quarterback. Lots of workhorse running back opportunities. That's going to be where my focus is centered on, is the running backs that we know are workhorses, and then wide receiver position, stack with your quarterbacks, play a few cheapies. You can play Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, or Ryan Brown, or even Evan Simon at quarterback to relieve some salary. But I think really the move this week is going to be go get your favorite quarterback up top, go stack him with one of his wide receivers, play a few of these workhorse running backs, and go from there, and then find salary savers to finish out your lineup. That's going to be my general strategy. We'll see if that continues throughout the week, if that thinking ends up holding true. But anyway, that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. My voice is running out of gas. Glad we made it. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point. If we were able to help you out in any way, make sure you hit that like button on YouTube. Make sure you rate and review if you're listening to audio. And then also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can come back for our live video that we're going to be doing later this week, probably Thursday night. But that's going to do it here for this episode, guys. Best of luck to you guys on the week 3 slate. Enjoy the college football like I always do. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you guys next time.